Welcome back to another episode of The Banker, the Broker, and the Canadian. We are back again with some great info and insights for you today. Our hope is that we might explore and cover the 5 most impactful daily practices to create abundance. So I know most of us in today's world have certain either financial or worldly desires or things that money is required for us to enjoy a certain experience. So today we wanted to talk through what some of those things are. And so to begin, I'll kick it over to Jim. Jim, what were your thoughts when you kind of decided that we should cover this today?
Well, happy Wednesday, everybody. And I think today's topic has a lot to do with not only just working hard, but also let's dig a little bit deeper into this concept of maybe some anchors that we can put in our daily lives that enhance those things. So we're not focused so much on like this whole concept of hard work, but like there is a part, maybe let's say if we take the circle, maybe 25% we could put the words hard work on there. And then the other 25%, maybe we could put who you work with. And then maybe if you take the other 50%, it's what you work on. And so that kind of actually helps you put a framework around your work instead of just saying, "Oh, I've got to work hard to achieve." And I look at social media and it makes me so much feeling of anxiety, and I've got to accumulate just by working hard. But let's take that concept a little bit better, and then there are some anchors that we can put in our life. And I love, love, love the word anchor. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the analogy this week is my dentist was fixing my teeth because I broke a crown way in the back. And I'm like, oh man. And so I went to him and he's got all these fancy equipment. And so he got the crown right away and put a temporary in and then sent it off. And we got it back recently. And so I saw him again and he was talking about his boat and putting it in Lake Washington. And he says, Jim, I got a new boat. I said, oh, that's great, Dr. Sean. I'm glad to hear that. And he said, but I filled it up with gas the other day near your neighborhood, and it cost me $252. I said, that's great. And he said, I think because I don't turn the boat off while I'm taking it out on the lake. And I said, oh, what do you mean? He said, well, I haven't figured out how to work the anchor. And all of a sudden the light went on and I went, oh, what a great analogy to share on our Wednesday podcast. The anchors in life we need to figure out, and those daily anchors that anchor us, then make it so if Sean figures out how on his boat to work the anchor, then he doesn't have to keep the motor on and keep trolling around the whole lake. He can turn the motor off, put the anchor down, and just kind of, chill and sit out. And so I think that, I'll toss it back to you two and you can dive a little bit more on that in your thoughts. But I just thought that was a great analogy and a story to begin with, how we definitely need anchors in our life. Otherwise, we're going to be like Sean's boat, just kind of going all over the place and wasting gas and, and until he figures out how to, anchor the boat, then that's what he's going to be doing. So
Sure. So before we maybe go in a different direction or go elsewhere, I'd like you to maybe spend a minute longer on that, or as you prepared for today. What are the anchors for you, Jim, on a daily basis that are important to you?
I think the number one is wake up and reset my mindset for gratefulness.
Okay.
That's a non-negotiable. And I think that anchor of gratefulness, and Jason touched on this post podcast and sent us something offline that really has resonated with me recently, that something in our brain, a portion of our brain, I think was what he was sending us, that if you have gratefulness, then you can't have anxiety, because anxiety and gratefulness come from the same portion of your brain. So you can either have one flow and you can have anxiety and all that, but you can't have both of them at the same time. Was what that particular concept was. And we probably need to bring in a neurologist or a brain doctor to give us a little bit more detail. But that was a concept that kind of resonated with me, and I've been telling everybody that's the truth. And I think that, if we have gratefulness in our life, and that's one of the big anchors for me, and probably one that I would attest to for my success in the business world and also in my personal relationships.
So what's great about that, Jim, is without us coordinating beforehand, I simply took your instructions of preparing some notes. And you may or may not be able to see, but I can read off what I put as my first one, which is orient yourself from a place of gratitude. And, to me, that's anchoring in gratitude, right? Abundance over scarcity. This idea, right? As much as we do have this natural inclination to desire things beyond us, right? Desire things and environments beyond our current situation, how important it is that we look around and recognize how great our current situation is, right? So I had a bit of a frustrating conversation with my daughter, my youngest, this morning. My normal process, one of my anchors is I run, right? That's my anchor habit. And so I ran this morning. I came back. I was feeling good. I was feeling much better after, obviously, than I did before. For whatever reason, it was particularly difficult for me to get going today, which a lot of days that is actually the case. A lot of people ask me, is it easy every morning? No. In fact, it's difficult, if not really challenging, most mornings. Anyway, I come back and I make eggs for my daughter for breakfast and calm my other one down. And how rude of me to disturb her from watching whatever television program she was watching on YouTube, to invite her over to the breakfast table to eat. And she was frustrated with me instead of being grateful that I made her a healthy breakfast with some toast and eggs, and then was frustrated because I wouldn't tilt the TV towards her so she could see it when I made her not eat in the living room. And so I get it. She's 7, right? Her limited understanding of life and the way that she looks at things is very much it's a selfish, like, how do I just gratify myself in this moment in what I seemingly think is most important? And so I say those things that how often do we as adults probably still live from a similar framework to where we see someone else, to your point, Jim, so Sean's got a boat. I don't have a boat. It's easy for someone without a boat to say, man, Sean's got a boat, and start like letting themselves be eaten up with, resentment around someone who has success beyond you, instead of looking around and saying, I don't have a boat, but, I have all these things, right? And so I just think it's so important that we orient ourselves from a place of appreciation as opposed to a place of want. Riti, as we're kind of sharing some of that, what are some of the daily anchors that maybe you have, or what were your thoughts around?
I mean, what Jim's saying, it resonates with me wholeheartedly. Going back to your try not envy thy neighbor, right? I think one of the things that really helped frame my ability to not envy, but to actually be grateful that I do have friends that actually have a boat. I do have friends that, if they have a second place that we can enjoy together when they invite me, and not say, oh, Jim has this and I don't. Why don't I have it? One of the things that helps is, everyone knows, or you've probably heard the law of, you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with. So when you put
Right.
in that context, if your average is succeeding, they have a boat, they have a big house, it actually elevates you and your average, because eventually you're going to do the daily habits. You're going to get in the mindset that got them to their place, and eventually you're going to raise up. And when your friends succeed, you're only succeeding and benefiting from it, indirectly, or in, like I said, in a mindset. But going back to the anchor, it's funny you say that, because way back in my past life, I've started a couple of business that I was just to be honest, I was chasing money. And,
Don't we
hustle.
all, right? At some point, that's the case, right?
And it really hurt my marriage. I would, work like crazy trying to, start off this tech company and just a bunch of other ventures. And the one thing is, when you chase money, it never ends. Coincidentally, 2 nights ago, I was watching some on YouTube about the biggest fraud in Vietnam that just happened. Have you heard of Troy Mai Lang?
Mm-mm.
So Troy Mai Lang makes Murdoch look like a baby. His fraud. She essentially stole 3% of Vietnamese GDP. And how she was able to do that is, so
Good.
she owned a real estate company. She chaired one of the biggest real estate company in Vietnam. And she also illegally had a controlling interest in a bank. And so what she would do is she would loan her own company money and put it back into a real estate. And that just kept piling up to a point where she loaned herself $27 billion, and pretty much lost it. And so the Vietnamese government, it got to a point where the Vietnamese government had to stop it because she was paying off officials, and the people were like, this is not right. Someone who's loaning themselves and then developing their real estate company. So anyways, she was on trial, arrested in 2022, and now she's sentenced for death because of that. But my point to it is, she could have stopped at her first hundred of millions, right? But when you're chasing money, you continue to chase money, and at some point, well,
Yep.
no, not at some point. It never ends, and you'll never be happy. And this is why I started subscribing to the philosophy Ikigai, and I've mentioned in previous podcasts. And it's really a way of living life with more of a purpose than just chasing money. And so when you talk about anchor, I kind of laughed inside because I had a conversation with a mutual friend of Jim and I, Bruce, and we talked about having anchors. And and I'll give you my 3 anchors. So the 3 anchors that I try to subscribe to or live by, and help me not to try to chase money, is you look back and you peel the onion and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And at the end of the day, for me, it's just, and I wrote it on this card, it's really to wake up to joy every day and do the work I love. So it comes down to 3 things: is do good, fun, and interesting things with good, fun, and interesting people to live a good, fun, and interesting life. So if it's not good and you're not doing good and you're not doing fun or interesting work with those people, then life isn't fun or interesting or good. So those are my anchors. And a book that might help with all this, that is a good read, is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's a terrific book. There you go.
Jason.
And he
I
really
love
he
it.
really lays out, he talks about the anchor, he talks, and Jason, just for the listener, we did not coordinate this. um
Seriously.
Simon Sinek has a circle, right? It's like what is it, like a target. Like a lot of companies starts with their product, what they do on the outside of the circle, and then they go to how they do it, but in the middle of the circle is why they do it. And so Simon, states, a lot of companies say, hey, we design cars, right, that are fast. And then they go back to our cars have this super duper manufacturing process with like V8 engines, blah, 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 right? And then they get to the why. It could be like, this is for someone who's, seeking freedom, thrill, independence, or whatever it is. And Simon, he says, actually, you should start with why first and then expand out. And this is what Apple, he gives an example of Apple. Apple does it amazingly. They start with, challenging the status quo. And so everything they do, the product they make, is to embody that, to challenge the status quo. And this is what has actually made the iPod so successful. Before iPod, there was tons of MP3 players out there. Apple didn't launch the first iPod or the first MP3 player. They were like behind the times. And then when they launched the iPod, you remember this if you're old enough, they had like a really cool commercial with just like awesome songs and people dancing and just, a fun vibe. And you barely even see the iPod. You don't even know what it is. But it just like, it outsold any MP3 player out there. And it actually saved Apple from going bankrupt, because all other products that developed from the iPod, the iPhone was the technology of the iPod and success of it. So anyways, yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
That's great, Riti. I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, I do have what Simon Sinek calls the golden circle, right?
Yes, the golden circle.
Yeah. So in the beginning, or in the center of it, is the why, then it's the how and the what. And he gives a really quick explanation of what a company, how they would describe their process if they began with the what. It's like, we make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user friendly. Want to buy one? That's not very emotionally charged. That's not very, whatever. The way that Apple actually communicates is, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user friendly. And we happen to make great computers. Want to buy one, right? It's the afterthought, right? The product is the afterthought. And so I think it's a great exercise for us to maybe try to apply that philosophy to how we go about what we do. And without even, again, having any coordination around this, I picked up on that from one of my first few interactions with Jim. And it was the way that he described the type of business he was in, right? And it had almost nothing to do with, an apartment or a property or a revenue or any of that. He described it in such a way of, he wanted to create safe space for people to live and enjoy their lives, right? And so it just so happened that his way of doing that was to provide them a better living experience than they had for comparable prices, right? And so, Jim, you've already kind of displayed that for me in even just the few interactions that I've heard you describe how you do what you do.
And the only thing to add with that would be, now, like with a dog. And I know all three of us have dogs. There's more dogs than there are children statistically in the city of Seattle, where I'm providing a lot of safe housing for people. And I just feel like the wholeness, and one of your anchors is to make sure that you have people around you that are on the same vibe with you, and also uh, part of the healthy environment is to have a dog or a pet in your lives in order to keep those anchors, at least in my life. And I think that at any age and any stage, that it's a good idea to maybe think about getting a dog or a cat or a goldfish or something that you need to take care of. And I think that anchors that calming spirit, or then if you have that anchor, then you can start being grateful. If you're running all over the place and you're trying to work and you're trying to get get and accumulate money without knowing the why and without having uh, those anchors that settle you down, especially at the beginning of the day, then I feel like it's tough, and I would say almost impossible to really accumulate and to succeed in those goals, that even if you've written them down on paper.
Yeah. Now, this is a bit of a different kind of thought, but one of my goals that I've written here, and y'all are familiar with my relationship with this book and how important it is to me. And that book, for those that are just listening, is called The Way to Love by Anthony DeMello. But a note that I wrote in the book is, my goal is to continuously and completely lose myself in present moment awareness in a spirit of gratitude. And so the idea is that we just kind of go about our day in a way that recognizes the wholeness of who we are, recognizes the satisfaction, the gratitude that we should operate from. And then I also put in here to contribute beyond yourself, right? So if you do embody that, right? If you live from a place that recognizes that no one else is responsible for your happiness, no one else is responsible for your fulfillment, that that's entirely an inside job, right? That we have to work that out in here, then when you live from that place, the natural expression of that orientation is going to be, how might I be able to help you better enjoy your life experience, whatever that looks like, right? And just so happens for me, it involves the financial wherewithal of the clients that I work with. But I don't really think of it in the Simon Sinek kind of way. I don't think of what I do as having to involve finances. That's the third thing, right? The first thing is, I feel like I'm in the peace of mind business, right? So what is my job? My job is to help improve your relationship with peace of mind, right? Like, do you operate from a place that just has comfort and ease? And then to the extent that I can impact that or improve that by helping you navigate your finances better, then great, right? And along the way, we're going to enjoy ourselves. And along the way, I'm going to maybe make certain suggestions that might challenge you a bit, because I know for us here, we recognize the importance of iron sharpens iron. In order for me to be willing to challenge you, I need to be confident enough in myself, but then also we have to have a bit of mutual respect that says, Jim, you know what? I feel like for whatever reason, you might not see how the way that you're currently going about that is probably not the best way. But from my point of view, I might just offer this thought. If you decide to change how you're going about it because of what I suggested, great. And if you don't, then just continue maybe being frustrated with the less than excellent way that you're doing it. That's maybe a gentle way, or that's like maybe a more just amicable way to invite someone to improve. But at the same time, the last way, the absolute last image or last way that I would want for someone to perceive how we interact is, you ought to do X, Y, and Z, and I need to show you the right way because I know better. I've been down the path longer than you, Sonny. No, forget that. No one's going to respond positively or receive that well, but just invite them into an improved. I know that was a bit of a rant, but I do have a few other thoughts that I wanted to share. Jim, is there anything else specifically around the area of abundance, right? So I get it, right? If we use Riti's analogy to start with why, that gives us more personal fulfillment, right? And that lets us feel better about how we go about things and gives us purpose in life. But specifically, maybe for the person out there, Jim, who maybe still is not quite at that place where they can see beyond the hurdle of scarcity. Because again, being in my world, I've worked with clients at all different levels of the socioeconomic status, right? I've got clients who are coming in at certain parts of my career. They would come in and they were just barely scraping by to make the minimum payments on their credit cards, all the way up to now, most of the clients that I work with will never in 10 lifetimes spend all the money that they have. And so I see this conversation through many different lenses. And I can say this from experience, the overwhelming majority of people, if they have not developed a good relationship with their financial situation, they cannot move on to anything else. It's so difficult to see beyond a scarcity mind. When you operate from a place of scarcity, it's so difficult to see anything else. It creates this cloud in front of your face that doesn't let you see even the beauty of the trees and the beauty of water and the beauty of the relationships in your life, because it occupies so much of your bandwidth. So and again, I know that was a big lead in, but specifically around abundance, is there something that you might encourage or advice you would give around that, Jim?
Oh, that's a great question. And the first thing that comes to mind without any practice, and we did not rehearse any of this. Today we have a hard stop with all three of us. And so we jumped on and started talking right away. So just want to make that clear that this is really a free flow with a little bit of a framework ahead of time, but there was no discussion about what we were going to say or do. Along this whole concept of anchoring and gratitude, I think the other thing that when people are frustrated with their finances, or they're still growing in that and trying to transition from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance in their mind, four letter word comes to mind, and that's hope. I think that you could probably even write OPE and then write it, and then have like the H for some meaning of happiness, the O for something, the P for something, and for the E for something. But at the end of the day, I truly think that for people that are making that transition and they're struggling, that I just want to put the anchor out there, that one of the anchors that is so important along with gratitude, in fact they can be twins, identical twins in your life, is not only having the gratitude but also marrying it or pairing it with hope. And I think that even in the darkest hours and the most struggle and the worst boss and the crummiest job, I always had hope that today I'm going to get a little bit better, and that after a huge setback in any age and stage of our lives, and we all have them. Let's just be honest, we do, right? We all struggle, and
Sure.
the the anchor of hope and that encouragement will keep you going. And sometimes you just really have to tie a knot and hold on to that hope. That
I like
you know,
that, Jim. And as you mentioned, kind of establishing it as a what's the word?
Abbreviation.
Yeah, an abbreviation. No, no, no. So, acronym. I don't know how I
yeah,
Yeah.
had that brain lapse. That was some fogginess there, but the acronym of HOPE. I wrote down a few quick words that HOPE could stand for. And to your point, happiness is kind of the first one, but I would also loop in there humility. And the reason why I say humility is because oftentimes the reason why people continue to do things that aren't working well for them is because they live with this concept of thinking that they're doing it right, but they're not, right? And so I think it takes some humility to adjust how you're approaching the situation. And the O, I think, can stand for openness. And open to what? You're open to a new opportunity. You're open to a new way of approaching it. And only once you've had that humility to say, maybe I'm not doing it right, then can I be open to say, okay, what is a new possibility for how I might approach it? And then the P can go to purpose, right? And so to Riti's point, when you operate from a place of purpose, there's this internal fire that gets stimulated, and that fire gets that flame gets kind of waved, and it really wells up to say, okay, I've got this intrinsic thing that motivates me and keeps me going. And then the last one is I put for the E of hope, to expand your awareness. Because as much as we do appreciate the moment, as much as we do have gratitude for this current, right, what's around us, we also have just an innate desire and an ability to expand and grow and contribute beyond ourselves. So as you expand that awareness, I'm thinking that that's a way that this cycle can continue, because as you expand that awareness, then once you get into that new environment, again, to Riti's point, if you're the average of the 5 people you're spending time with in that new environment, then what's naturally going to happen for you is you're going to get humbled again. And then it's going to require you to go through the whole cycle all over again. So that was a pretty nice little impromptu teamwork there, Jim, to come up with an acronym for hope.
I actually had my own as Jim was saying that too, Jason. And it's
Please
funny.
share.
It's very similar, but I agree. The happiness, that's my why, is wake up to joy. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve is happiness. Maybe it's through money and wealth. Maybe it's through health, fitness, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to happiness. So I like the H in happiness. The O would be opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity in there. And to create that happiness, you just got to find and you got to tune your frequency to what opportunities out there. It's
Yeah.
very abundant, right?
yeah,
And then the P is planet. right? You plan your strategy on how to seek that opportunity. Set your 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year goal, and how you go about to achieve that freedom, financial freedom. And then the E, plain and simple, execute. Just go out and do it. And yeah, that resonate with me, because that's kind of how I've set my, I call it Ikigai 5, which is in 5 years to get my financial freedom and to do the things that create joy and inspire me to wake up and be happy. So yeah,
That's
it's
awesome, Riti. Thank you for sharing that. All right, guys, as we wrap, any closing thoughts from you, Jim? How would you summarize this, or any parting thoughts that you have?
I think we got it all together today, and just throughout your day as you're listening to this, think about how you're anchoring, how you're being grateful, and what you're hoping for. And maybe I would challenge you to take your own HOPE in your own words. We've given you several examples this morning, but then own it and take the H and the O and the P and the E, write it down, and put some meaning behind it that helps you individually to anchor. And I'm wishing you all the best today. Uh, Make it an amazing day by deciding it's going to be amazing, and that you're going to be grateful, and you're going to have those anchors in your life.
That's awesome, Jim. Riti, any closing thoughts on your end, my man?
just there, as you all mentioned, there's a lot of abundance out there in the world. It's not it's don't operate in a mindset of scarcity. There's enough for everyone out there, so go get it.
Great. A few wrap up thoughts from me. Again, orient yourself from a place of gratitude, right? Abundance over scarcity. A few other thoughts that I had, I don't want to cover them all, but just this idea of financial wherewithal and financial preparedness allows for freedom. Okay. That is key, right? So to Reedy's point, the idea of being able to, you know, do interesting things. In order for something that you're doing to have to be able to be interesting, you have to be able to afford that, right? And so that idea of being free to be able to do that is key. And don't have fear. Don't have fear around whether it's going to work out or not. Just boldly go in the direction that you have in mind, and know that everything's going to work out. So until we meet again, till next week, till next time, please subscribe. Check out the channel. That helps us out a good bit. We are on Spotify and on YouTube. We're working on trying to get it to Apple now. But until we meet again, y'all be cool. Peace.
Peace out.